So I wanted to change the tone up a little bit from the previous video where I seem to be in a high arousal state. And this is a term according to psychology. And I think it's something when we're talking about anti-racism is really important because when people of color are put in white spaces where there's a very stark difference between the experiences of individuals present and there's only one person of color, I have come to realize that that produces an environment with a very high level of arousal. And as psychology studies have suggested, arousal, when it is too high, when it goes above normal levels of motivation, when there is a heightened sense of fear and anxiety, arousal levels go up. And then this has a direct correlation with one's performance. And so this is exactly why representation matters. Representation matters because when representation is not present, the fear experienced in environments where one does not connect with anyone interpersonally, those levels rise, the fear rises. So it's really important to think about how in the situations of the fora where I was clearly a target, my arousal was very, very high. However, I do feel that I handled myself well, which is why I am being very vocal about it now, because I realized at the time that although my heart rate went up and I was experiencing extreme anxiety, I was able to maintain. Now, that leads me to not be labeled as an angry Latina or a crazy Latina, as some women of color with my ethnicity have been in the past. For African American women, they're often labeled the angry black woman, but really it could be high levels of arousal and fear and threats of survival. And these are basic psychological facts based on psychological studies. So I think it's important to look into that and its relationship to anti-racism. So when my credibility, going back to the previous video, when my credibility is challenged, that definitely heightens my arousal level because it makes me feel like my experiences are invalid and only one perspective is valid and my perspective is not, which is clearly creating and contributing to a toxic work environment. So we have a common knowledge of a toxic work environment in terms of physical reactions, and then we have an academic understanding of a toxic work climate and how that can psychologically impact one's hormonal levels to increase arousal due to fear, because obviously emotions are a factor and a result of chemical alterations in our body. So when our emotions are heightened, it's because there's some kind of physical chemical reaction that is going on. And in spaces of fear, threat, and of underrepresentation, these kinds of emotions are activated. So it's really important to think about the relationship between high arousal environments, lack of representation, and toxic work climates, and the psychological effects on individuals that all these factors come into play in relation to. Thank you. Peace.